There's a quiet lie at the center of most self-improvement advice. The lie is that change happens when you try harder, that if you just apply more pressure, more discipline, more structure, eventually something will stick. But if that were true, the most exhausted people on Earth would also be the most fulfilled. They aren't. They're just tired. Why force always backfires? Here's something no one tells you early enough. Your nervous system does not experience force as motivation. It experiences force as threat. And threatened systems do not evolve, they defend. This is why dramatic life overhauls so often collapse back into old patterns. You don't fail. Your system protects itself. You wake up earlier, you cut dopamine, you impose rigid rules, and for a while you feel powerful. But underneath that power is tension, and tension is not sustainable. Sooner or later, the system rebels, not loudly, but subtly. You miss one day, then two, then you start negotiating, and eventually you're back where you started, except now you're carrying shame. Identity is not changed through intensity. Identity changes through normalization. This is the part most people miss. Your brain does not ask, "Is this impressive?" It asks, "Is this safe to repeat?" Anything that feels like a performance will eventually be rejected. Anything that feels like a threat to belonging will be sabotaged, and anything that requires you to constantly be on will exhaust you into retreat. So if force doesn't work, what does? The principle of identity drift. Lasting transformation happens through something quieter. I call it identity drift, not a dramatic leap, a slow gravitational shift. Identity drift happens when a behavior feels slightly uncomfortable but not threatening, it aligns with a future self you respect, and it is repeated without emotional friction. Over time, the system updates, not because you commanded it to, but because it adapted. This is how identities actually evolve, not through declarations, through exposure. Why small changes matter more than big ones? Small actions are not powerful because they're small. They're powerful because they don't trigger defense mechanisms. When you attempt a massive change, your identity hears, "This version of you is unacceptable." That's a threat. But when you make a small shift, the message is different. This is an expansion, not a replacement, and the system allows it. This is why someone can casually become a runner over 2 years, but fail miserably trying to become disciplined in 30 days. Identity is built on evidence, not intention. Your mind does not believe your affirmations. It believes your receipts. Every action you repeat becomes evidence, and evidence shapes identity far more than motivation ever could. If you write for 10 minutes a day for long enough, you don't feel like a writer. You simply stop questioning whether you are one. If you train consistently at a level that feels normal, you don't hype yourself up. You just move differently through the world. This is how identity becomes effortless. The role of environment, underrated and ignored. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Most people try to change themselves while leaving their environment untouched. That's like swimming upstream forever. Your environment is constantly shaping your behavior. What you see, what's easy, what's rewarded, what's normalized, and identity follows behavior. If your environment reinforces the old self, you will revert, no matter how strong your will is. Change your environment, and you change the default, and defaults are everything. Why burnout is a signal, not a failure. Burnout isn't always about doing too much. Often it's about acting out of alignment. When your actions require constant suppression of who you think you are, you leak energy. That's why pretending to be disciplined is exhausting, while being disciplined is not. The goal is not to white-knuckle your way into a new life. The goal is to build a life that no longer requires white-knuckling. The quiet test of alignment. Here's a simple test. Ask yourself, if no one could see this, would I still do it? If the answer is no, you're performing, and performances don't last. The more your progress relies on external validation, the weaker the identity foundation becomes. Real identity change feels boring at first, quiet, unimpressive. That's how you know it's real. Why most people quit right before it works. There's a cruel timing problem with identity change. The internal shift always happens after the behavior stabilizes, not before, which means there's a period where you're acting differently, but you don't feel different, and you don't see results yet. This is where most people stop. They assume it isn't working. In reality, the system just hasn't updated its self-image yet. Identity lags behind behavior, always. If you quit early, you never cross that threshold. The moment identity locks in. Then one day, something strange happens. You skip a behavior, and it feels off. Not guilty, not dramatic, just wrong. That's the moment identity has shifted. The behavior is no longer something you do, it's something you are. And at that point, discipline disappears. Why this changes everything? Once identity updates, effort drops, decision fatigue fades, you stop negotiating with yourself, and the same actions that once felt heavy now feel obvious. This is the difference between people who constantly work on themselves and people who quietly live in alignment. One is fighting gravity, the other has redirected it. Closing reflection. If there's one thing to understand from this entire series, it's this. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. But identity is not fixed, it's just conservative. It updates slowly, reluctantly, and permanently once convinced. Your job is not to overwhelm it. Your job is to show it a new normal, over and over again, quietly, until it believes you.